I will only recognize one China called Taiwan. U.S. conducts Taiwan Strait flyover amid tensions. The price of metal has plummeted since the Great Recession. G7 nations will ban imports of Russian gold. U.S. bipartisan gun violence bill signed by Biden. At least 20 found dead in South African nightclub. G7 to push back against China's Belt and Road with $200 billion. Filipino wins transgender pageant in Thailand.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's June 27th, Monday, and here are your top stories. The president of Guatemala, Dr. Alejandro Giammattei, said, "I will only recognize one China, and it is called Taiwan." When asked about Guatemala's strategic significance to Taiwan, Giammattei told LatAm Investor, the only investment magazine in the UK that focuses on Latin America, in an interview. Does the US government recognize this? The president said, "Maybe you should explain that to them. We're the largest ally that Taiwan still has, and while I'm president, I will only recognize one China, and it is called Taiwan."
A nosotros nos critican y nos aguantamos. Allá uno critica y no se aguanta mucho.
Since the official name of Taiwan is the Republic of China, the one China recognized by the president of Guatemala, Dr. Alejandro Giammattei, is referred to as the Republic of China. The Central News Agency reported that this was the first time Giammattei openly clarified Guatemala's stance on the issue, since Chinese state-run mouthpiece The Global Times published an article on June 2nd insinuating that the country would turn its back on Taiwan and recognize China.
A U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance plane flew over the Taiwan Strait on June 24th in a demonstration of the United States' commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, just days after 29 Chinese warplanes entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said in a statement, "By operating within the Taiwan Strait in accordance with international law, the United States upholds the navigational rights and freedoms of all nations."
Apollo News reports that an American P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft flew over the center of the Taiwan Strait on June 24th.
Certain media outlets have reported that China's foreign ministry reasserted previous statements that the Taiwan Strait is not international waters on June 13th. On June 21st, China sent 29 warplanes into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. 3 days later, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said in a statement, "A U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon transited the Taiwan Strait in international airspace on June 24th. The United States will continue to fly, sail, and operate anywhere international law allows, including within the Taiwan Strait."
As copper has ricocheted into a bear market from a record 4 months ago, and tin just tumbled 21% in its worst week since the 1980s crisis froze London trading for 4 years. Recession fear in the market grew on Sunday, June 26th. Bloomberg reported industrial metals are on track for the worst quarter since the 2008 financial crisis, as prices are pummeled by recession worries. The market worries about a slowdown in industrial activity across major economies dovetail with slumping demand in China. Prices are plummeting.
At $9,813 per ton this year, dipping to somewhere around $8,375 per ton in 2023.
Bloomberg said the current situation is a dramatic reversal from the past 2 years, when metals surged on a wave of post-lockdown optimism, inflationary predictions, and supply chain issues. It's currently a major problem and supplies are still tight. Despite this, prices are plummeting. Some say this is occurring because of shrinking Chinese manufacturing, European industrial output contracting for the first time in 2 years, and a 23-month low for the U.S. manufacturing sector.
The UK, US, Canada, and Japan will ban imports of Russian gold in an effort to hit Moscow's ability to fund the war in Ukraine. US President Joe Biden suggested the other G7 nations, Germany, France, and Italy, would also join the ban. He said, "Together, the G7 will announce that we will ban the import of Russian gold, a major export that rakes in tens of billions of dollars for Russia." The G7 group of the world's richest nations opened a 3-day summit in Bavarian Alps on Sunday, June 26th.
We aim to mobilize nearly $600 billion from the G7 by 2027.
The BBC reported the UK government said the move would have a huge impact on President Putin's ability to raise funds. The latest sanction will mean UK import restrictions will apply to Russian exports worth around £13.5 billion. The UK said the gold import ban would come into effect shortly, with legislation introduced in Parliament in the coming weeks. It will apply to newly mined or refined gold and does not impact gold previously exported from Russia.
U.S. President Joe Biden on June 25th signed the most sweeping gun violence bill in decades, a bipartisan compromise that seemed unimaginable until a recent series of mass shootings. Biden said in the Roosevelt Room of the White House, "Time is of the essence. Lives will be saved." Citing the families of shooting victims he has met, the president said the message to us was, "Do something." How many times do we hear that? Just do something. For God's sake, just do something. And today we did.
The AP reported that the legislation will toughen background checks for the youngest gun buyers and keep firearms from more domestic violence offenders. In addition, $13 billion of federal aid will be given to 19 states, plus the District of Columbia, that have laws helping authorities get court orders to temporarily remove guns from people who have been deemed dangerous. Those states will need strong processes for challenging the taking of firearms. Other states could use the money for crisis intervention programs.
South African authorities said on June 26th, at least 20 young people have been found dead in a nightclub in the South African city of East London. Most of those found dead were aged between 18 and 20. The incident occurred in the early hours of Sunday. Local media said bodies lay inside the Annie Opening Tavern as if they had collapsed, but there were no obvious injuries on the victims. The cause of death is unknown. Post-mortem examinations are due to be carried out at mortuaries.
The Premier of Eastern Cape Province blamed the deaths on the unlimited consumption of liquor. Eastern Cape Provincial Community and Safety Department official Unathi Benosk ruled out a stampede as the cause of death. He said he understood the patrons were students celebrating Pens Down, a party held after writing exams. However, regional newspaper Dispatch Live reported those who died were exposed to some kind of poison.
The United States aims to raise $200 billion in private and public funds over 5 years to fund needed infrastructure in developing countries under a G7 initiative aimed at countering China's multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road project. The White House said on Sunday, June 26, the U.S. President Joe Biden will unveil the plans, flanked by other group of 7 leaders, at their annual gathering being held this year at Scholars Amul in southern Germany.
Reuters reported G7 leaders first floated plans for the project last year and are formally launching it now under a fresh title, Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, while dropping the moniker Build Back Better World, first coined by Biden during his presidential campaign. Notably absent will be French President Emmanuel Macron, whose country is formally a part of the Chinese infrastructure program. Biden will unveil several specific projects at the G7 summit, joined by leaders from Britain, Germany, Japan, the European Union, and Canada.
Media reported Filipina Fuxia Ann Ravina was crowned Miss International Queen 2022 on June 25th at a contest in Thailand, billed as the world's largest and most popular transgender pageant. The 27-year-old business owner beat 22 other contestants for the crown, with the second and third place going to contestants from Colombia and France, respectively. The pageant, which was halted because of the pandemic, resumed in the Thai seaside town of Pattaya during Pride Month to also celebrate gender equality.
Ravina, Miss International Queen of 2022, said, "My first message to everyone is to spread love and peace and unity, because that is the most important thing that we do as of the moment and what's happening in the world right now. The contest, which brings together transgender people from around the world, was launched over a decade ago to help transgender women feel more accepted by society. Thailand has one of Asia's most open and visible lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities."
And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I will see you next time.